Welcome to this journey through one of the most chilling tragedies recorded in history. A story whose whispers still echo across time. Before we begin, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact time at which you're listening to this narration. We're interested in knowing to which places and at what times of day or night these documented accounts reach. New York City, 1911. A city of light, labor, and endless ambition. Immigrants crowded into narrow tenements, factories roared with the sound of machines, and the dream of prosperity filled the smoky air. Yet in the shadows of progress, danger lingered. Hidden behind locked doors, ignored warnings, and unchecked greed. This is the story of the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. A tragedy that silenced 146 souls in less than half an hour and reshaped labor rights for generations. New York at the dawn of the 20th century was a paradox. It was both the city of dreams and the city of despair. By 1911, Manhattan was home to more than 2 million immigrants. Italians, Jews, Germans, Irish, and others. Crowded into neighborhoods where laundry hung across narrow alleys and children played in streets filled with pushcarts and horse-drawn wagons. The city was alive with industry. Factories churned out garments, cigars, and furniture, while Wall Street's wealth soared. But for the working poor, especially women, life was harsh. Rents were crushing, disease spread quickly in crowded tenements, and work meant long hours in unsafe conditions. The garment industry, the beating heart of New York's economy, employed over 100,000 workers, most of them young immigrant women. They were daughters of Europe, bringing with them hope but finding hardship. Many worked 6 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, for wages barely enough to cover food and rent. On the Lower East Side, one could hear the languages of dozens of nations. But in the factories, the voice that mattered was the whistle calling workers back to their machines. The garment trade was booming. The shirtwaist, a fashionable women's blouse, was a symbol of modernity. To meet the demand, factories sprung up across the city, and none was more prominent than the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. Founded by Max Blank and Isaac Harris, the so-called Shirtwaist Kings, the factory occupied the top 3 floors of the Ash Building near Washington Square. The building was considered fireproof, its exterior made of brick and steel. But inside, the story was different. Long rows of sewing machines filled the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors. Wooden tables piled with scraps of cotton and muslin lined the workrooms. Gas lamps and oil-soaked floors made the space a tinderbox. Buckets of water, meant as fire safety, were often empty, and the doors locked. Ostensibly to prevent theft, but in practice, to keep workers from leaving early or taking unsupervised breaks. Despite past fires in their factories, Blank and Harris invested little in safety. Their focus was production, speed, and profit. The Ash Building may have been hailed as modern, but within, it was a sweatshop, primed for disaster. To understand the magnitude of what would unfold, we must step into the shoes of those who worked at Triangle. Picture a young girl, perhaps 16, hunched over a Singer sewing machine. The air is thick with lint, her fingers raw from endless stitching. She speaks little English, her family depending on the few dollars she earns each week. Around her, hundreds of others toil. Women in long skirts, hair pinned back, eyes fixed on the work that consumes their days. The factory floor buzzed with noise, clattering machines, foremen shouting, the creak of iron chairs. Breaks were short, bathrooms few. Workers were searched when leaving, to ensure they didn't steal a scrap of fabric. Complaints were frequent. "The doors are locked," some said. Others whispered of fire hazards. But complaints rarely traveled far. In a world where jobs were scarce and mouths at home hungry, silence was often the only choice. Still, there were murmurs of resistance. In 1909, the uprising of the 20,000, a massive garment workers' strike, had briefly brought attention to labor conditions. Triangle workers were among the strikers, but Blank and Harris resisted. When the strike ended, little changed at Triangle. The stage was set for tragedy. It was Saturday, March 25, 1911. The workday was nearly over. The afternoon sun stretched shadows across Washington Square as workers sewed their final stitches before heading home. Pay envelopes had been handed out, spirits were light. At approximately 4:40 p.m., fire broke out. Whether from a cigarette, a match, or a spark, flames erupted in a scrap bin filled with fabric cuttings on the 8th floor. Within seconds, the blaze spread across tables, devouring fabric like kindling. Shouts of fire filled the air. Smoke rose, machines screeched to a halt. Some ran for the elevators, tiny cages carrying only a dozen at a time. Others bolted to the stairwells, only to find one exit locked. Panic surged as flames climbed higher. Within minutes, the fire leapt to the 9th floor. Workers there had no warning. Flames burst through windows, filling rooms with choking smoke. Choices narrowed: burn, suffocate, or leap. Imagine the terror. Smoke so thick you cannot see. Heat blistering your skin. Screams rising around you. Some tried the fire escape, but it collapsed under the weight of fleeing workers, sending them crashing to their deaths. Others ran to windows. Firefighters arrived quickly, but their ladders reached only the 6th floor, 3 floors too short. Desperate workers leapt from the 9th and 10th floors, their bodies striking the pavement below. One witness, Lewis Waldman, described the horror. "I saw girls leaping from the 9th and 10th floors. Thud. Dead bodies on the pavement. The floods of water from the fire hoses drowned the girls jumping from the windows. I cannot forget it. Elevator operators risked their lives, making trip after trip to rescue as many as they could, until heat warped the rails and the elevators jammed. Survivors later recalled stuffing into the cars, clutching each other as flames licked at their clothes. In just 18 minutes, the fire consumed the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Onlookers gathered in horror. Crowds filled Washington Place, their eyes fixed on the inferno above. They watched, powerless, as young women appeared in windows, flames at their backs. Some crossed themselves before leaping. Others clasped hands, jumping together. The ground below became a scene of unspeakable tragedy. Bodies lay on the pavement. Fire hoses washed away blood, and the screams of survivors mingled with the silence of shock. In those moments, the world bore witness to the deadly cost of negligence. A city that had built its wealth on the backs of workers was forced to see their suffering laid bare in the street. By the time the fire was out, 146 workers were dead. Most were young women, some no older than 14. When the fire was finally extinguished, silence settled over Washington Square. But the silence was heavy, broken only by the weeping of families who searched for loved ones among the lifeless bodies laid out along the street. 146 men and women perished, most of them immigrant girls in their teens and 20s. They died in stairwells, in elevators, at locked doors and on the unforgiving pavement below. News spread swiftly across New York. The next morning, newspapers carried harrowing accounts and photographs. The public, already uneasy about sweatshop conditions, was horrified. The Triangle Fire was not merely an accident. It was a national tragedy. On April 5th, a massive funeral procession was held. More than 350,000 people filled the rain-soaked streets, mourning the dead and demanding justice. The sight of endless umbrellas moving in silence became one of the most haunting images of the tragedy. Workers and families walked together in grief, but also in defiance, signaling that the deaths would not be forgotten. Public outrage soon turned to the owners of the factory, Max Blank and Isaac Harris. Known as the Shirtwaist Kings, they faced charges of manslaughter. The trial revealed chilling facts. The doors had indeed been locked. Fire drills had never been conducted. Safety measures were grossly inadequate. Witnesses testified of blocked exits and neglected fire escapes. But Blank and Harris claimed ignorance. They argued that they did not know the doors were locked during working hours. Their attorneys painted them as distant businessmen, not directly responsible for the choices of foremen or building staff. In the end, the jury acquitted them. Justice slipped away. Families of the dead received a mere $75 for each life lost, barely enough to cover burial costs. Meanwhile, Blank and Harris collected insurance payouts far exceeding the compensation given to victims' families. The trial added fuel to the fire of public anger. The people of New York realized that without stronger laws, tragedies like Triangle would continue. The outrage birthed activism. Workers, especially women, raised their voices louder than ever before. Rose Schneiderman, a fiery union organizer, delivered one of the most powerful speeches in the aftermath. "This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in the city. Every week I must learn of the untimely death of one of my sister workers. The life of men and women is so cheap, and property is so sacred. There are so many of us for one job, it matters little if 146 of us are burned to death." Her words struck like lightning. They revealed the cruel imbalance between labor and capital, between profit and human life. The Triangle Fire ignited momentum for unions such as the International Ladies Garment Workers Union, ILGWU. They organized strikes, lobbied lawmakers, and fought for safer working conditions. Women who had once been silent began marching, chanting, and demanding dignity. For the first time, the voices of working-class immigrant women shaped the national conversation. In the wake of the fire, New York lawmakers could no longer ignore the cries for change. The state established the Factory Investigating Commission, a sweeping inquiry into labor conditions. Investigators toured factories, interviewed workers, and documented horrors. Overcrowded spaces, blocked exits, children at machines, and unsanitary conditions. From these investigations came more than 30 new laws. Buildings were required to install sprinklers. Fire drills became mandatory. Doors had to remain unlocked during working hours. Work weeks were limited. Women and minors could no longer be forced into endless hours. Beyond safety, the fire reshaped the labor movement itself. Workers realized that unity could drive reform. Politicians, pressured by unions and the public, embraced progressive labor legislation. The whispers of the Triangle Fire echoed into new laws. new protections, and a shift in the balance of power between workers and employers. The Triangle Fire did not simply belong to 1911. Its lessons reverberated across decades. Every fire drill in a school, every illuminated exit sign in a theater, every sprinkler system in a modern office. These are the legacies of the Triangle workers. Their deaths were not in vain. Their whispers became the safeguards we live with today. But the echoes also serve as warnings. Even in modern times, workplace tragedies occur where profit outweighs safety, where voices are silenced, and where workers are treated as expendable. The Triangle Fire asks us, have we truly learned? Or are we still ignoring whispers until they become screams? Welcome to this journey through one of the most chilling tragedies recorded in history. A story whose whispers still echo across time. We began with a fire in a scrap bin, and we end with 146 lives etched into history. Their names may fade from memory, but their story reshaped the world. The Triangle Fire was more than flames. It was a turning point. From its ashes rose unions, reforms, and a new awareness of the value of human life over profit. The workers who perished did not die in silence. Their whispers became a roar that forced a nation to change. As you finish this story, remember that the rights we enjoy today, safety laws, working hours, fire codes, were bought at a terrible cost. These are not gifts, but legacies carved from sacrifice. If the whispers of the past moved you, share this story. Comment below where you are watching from and when. Let the voices of the Triangle Fire reach across time and space, ensuring they are never forgotten. This is Whispers of the Past.